lift this up out of the pan. And now I'm gonna cut it now while it's still warm. So hopefully it won't crack too much. So it's important to make sure you cut it while it's warm, because it's very tender and flaky and we don't want cracks. So you could use a measuring there's a yardstick or a ruler to get your slices exactly perfect. But I'm gonna make long strips and then probably rectangles. And I'm just gonna eyeball it. You know, this is just a small amount, which I'm not planning on selling these, but if I was selling them, I would be a lot more accurate, make sure each one is exactly the same. Now I have this much left. I want to make sure I can get 3 out of it. So I've got to make sure. There we go. I'm using a chef's knife to cut it. And then just rotate around. And so I'm just eyeballing it. Should I do little squares or should I do the traditional size? Shortbread is usually rectangular. So I'll do a couple rectangular and a couple square. It's about the same size. And there's a nice square. There we go. So when you're preparing cookies and maybe you're making a cookie platter or a dessert buffet or something like that, you want to vary the designs of the cookies. You don't want them all round. Otherwise, there's no visual appeal to it. And when you do a cookie platter, you want to definitely have lots of different shapes to make it more interesting. Now, if I poke it now, you might recognize it. This is really what the shortbread cookie design looks like, more traditional one. So I'll just. Of course, it doesn't help if the fork is bent. It's a little bent. But anyhow, that's what it looks like. That's the traditional design. And these need to continue to cool and then I can eat them. But I'm sure everyone who eats them is just gonna enjoy it. See, now that one fell apart. So I'm gonna stop poking them. I think I need to perfect this recipe a little bit more before I say it's completely done. But anyhow, it is fun to do. And I'm gonna try this also with the melted butter if I get a chance. I'll try it with the melted butter and see how that comes out. Okay, so this is our shortbread that I just made and it has melted butter in it. So I did the recipe again, and this time I used melted butter and I changed the cornstarch and the flour just a little bit. The previous cookie was very flaky and tender, but it did break very easily. So I wanted to reduce the cornstarch so it would be a little bit thicker. Now I'm gonna cut this with our chef's knife and get nice long strips. I'll do a couple. I also let it cook for a bit longer. This was 30 minutes at 300 degrees. So it's a bit more golden on the edge. And it's also holding together better. The other one, when I cut it, kind of fell apart. So this is, oh no, I spoke too soon. It's beginning to crack. All right, so you can see it's very tender, very flaky. The other thing is that you want to use a really good butter because that's the main ingredient in here. So if I was going to make these again, I might splurge and buy a little bit of a more expensive butter. This is the taste. That's what you're going to taste. All right, so I'm going to have this little tail bit there. All right, so now we can rotate it. Put it back together. Rectangle, and then I'll make a couple squares. And for the rectangles, we want to put a fork in it to give it that distinctive shortbread appearance. This is still warm, that's why I'm able to do it. I did try it before with the previous one, and I poked it while it was unbaked, and then the holes closed up while it baked. So now we're poking them right when they come out to give it that distinctive appearance. You don't have to, if you don't want to. All right, now here's the true test. If it tastes as good as the previous one, which is absolutely delicious. So I'm just gonna take this little one that's broken. So it's still very flaky. It's very good. All right, so this does get better the next day. So the true test will be for me to taste this tomorrow and let you know whether or not it tastes as good with the butter melted or with the butter soft. When you're doing with the butter melted, you can just whip it all together in a bowl and you don't need the stand mixer. But when you're using the soft butter, you need the stand mixer to paddle it till it's light and fluffy. So it'd be a lot easier if I can just use melted butter and make this recipe. So I will have to let everybody know tomorrow. Here we are, day 2 after baking the shortbread that has melted butter in it and less cornstarch. And I'm gonna take a taste. These are the dark golden ones, the ones that were with the soft butter used in the stand mixer. These 3, and I'm gonna taste it. It's so good. I love this. And it is even better the next day. I promise you. That tastes so much better than yesterday. And it really is so good. So, I think you can use either soft or melted butter. Either one. So if you don't have a stand mixer at home, melt the butter and mix everything together. Perfect way to do it. And my end result was 3/4 of a cup unsalted butter. We did a 1/4 cup of powdered sugar, confectioner sugar, or 1 ounce, a 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 ounces, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and we did 1 1/4 cups of flour, which is 5.75 ounces, and only a 1/4 cup of cornstarch. I think the previous one had too much cornstarch. So definitely 1/4 cup of cornstarch or 1.3 ounces. Mix it all together, bake it in the baking pan, slice. You can cut these in squares. They don't have to be rectangles with the fork hole on top. Any way you'd like to cut it, go right ahead and enjoy. But they are just so delicious. Yum. All right, I'm gonna actually share some of these, so I won't eat them all. Or maybe I will. Who knows? Bye.